Elliot sat at his desk, the sterile hum of the fluorescent lights above echoing in the otherwise silent office. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, the cursor blinking in a hypnotic rhythm. Outside the window, the world moved on, people rushing past, their lives filled with purpose and direction. He envied them. He envied their certainty, their ability to go about their day without the weight of invisible chains tightening around their minds. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second dragging on longer than the last. Elliot had been working here for the better part of 5 years, his job as an analyst at a law firm a repetitive blur of numbers and documents. He didn't mind it. Work was a distraction, a place where he could lose himself in the monotony. But lately the monotony had become unbearable. For the past few weeks, something had been gnawing at the edges of his mind. It was subtle at first, a fleeting thought that didn't quite make sense, a feeling of déjà vu, the sense that something was just off. It started with the feeling that he was being watched. At first it was a glance from a stranger on the street, then it became more frequent, more intense. Elliot would turn around, expecting to find someone behind him, but no one would be there. He would hear footsteps echoing behind him when he was alone, but when he looked, the hallway was empty. It was all in his head, he told himself. He had always been a little fragile. His past was fractured, a collection of blurry memories and unspoken truths. He had learned to cope, to push the darkness aside, but now it seemed to be creeping back. His phone buzzed on the desk, pulling him from his thoughts. A package had arrived at the front desk for him. There was no return address, just his name in neat printed letters. Curiosity pricked at him. It was rare for him to receive anything other than bills or work-related mail. He picked up the package and walked toward the lobby, his footsteps echoing off the cold marble floors. As he reached the front desk, the receptionist handed him the small, unassuming box. It was heavier than he expected. He turned it over in his hands, examining it carefully. No markings, no labels, just the smooth surface of plain brown cardboard. He felt an odd sense of dread settle in his stomach. The packaging seemed ordinary, but something about it felt wrong, as if it didn't belong. Elliot tore open the cardboard, revealing a small, intricately carved wooden box inside. It was beautiful in a way that made him feel uneasy. The carving seemed almost too detailed, too deliberate. A small brass latch held the box shut. He hesitated, staring at it, but then curiosity got the better of him. He undid the latch and opened the box. Inside, there was a single photograph, its edges frayed from years of wear. The image was of a woman, young with dark eyes and long raven black hair. Elliot felt an immediate pang in his chest, as though something deep inside him was reacting to the sight of her. He didn't know her. He couldn't place her, but there was a strange sense of recognition. His fingers trembled as he turned the photo over. The message was written in delicate handwriting, the words barely visible through the smudges of ink. "Find me, before they find you." The sentence sent a chill down his spine. His heart raced, and he felt the familiar sense of unease bubble up. Who was this woman? Why did her face seem so familiar? And what did the cryptic message mean? Elliot closed the box, his mind spinning. He couldn't explain why, but he felt an overwhelming compulsion to find out more. He couldn't shake the feeling that this puzzle was somehow connected to him, his past, his mind, and the inexplicable darkness that had begun to creep back into his life. That night, Elliot sat in his dimly lit apartment, staring at the photograph. The room was quiet, save for the soft rustling of the wind outside. The image of the woman haunted him, her dark eyes seeming to pierce through him. He ran his fingers over the photograph, trying to remember something, anything. But the harder he tried, the further the memory slipped from his grasp. His mind raced with questions. Who was she? Why had someone sent this to him? And why did he feel like he knew her, like there was something important about her that he couldn't remember? As the hours passed, Elliot's thoughts became more frantic. He had to know the truth. He had to solve the puzzle, but the more he thought about it, the more elusive the answers became. Every time he thought he had a lead, It slipped through his fingers. Suddenly, a sharp knock at the door startled him. Elliot's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't been expecting anyone. He walked cautiously to the door, peering through the peephole. No one was there. Confused, he opened the door, only to find nothing but the silence of the hallway. But there, lying on the floor, was another small package. His breath caught in his throat as he bent down to pick it up. This time, there was no return address, just the same plain packaging. Inside, he found another photograph. This one was of the same woman, but this time, she was standing in front of a building he recognized, the old church at the edge of town. The message on the back was simple, yet it sent a shiver through him. "They're watching. Trust no one." Elliot's mind raced. Who was sending him these pictures? Why was he being dragged into this strange puzzle? He couldn't deny the feeling anymore. Something was wrong. Something had always been wrong, and this was just the beginning. As he sat back down at his desk, the photographs scattered before him, Elliot realized that the pieces of his past were beginning to align in a way he couldn't understand. The puzzle was far more than just a cryptic game. It was his reality, his life, and he was about to unravel something that would change everything. But the question remained, was he ready to face what lay hidden beneath the surface? Elliot spent the next few days locked in his apartment, obsessively studying the photographs. The woman in the images, Isabel, seemed to be everywhere. Her face, her eyes, followed him in every room, every corner of his mind. The more he looked at her, the more he felt like he was losing his grip on reality. Each photo sent him spiraling further into confusion, urging him to find her, to piece together the cryptic messages that she had left for him. The second photograph had been the catalyst. The old church, he knew it, he had been there before, years ago. But why? What was so significant about the place, and why had he forgotten about it? His mind ached, the pieces refusing to fit together. As he searched for answers, his sleep became more erratic. At night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the nightmares to begin, and they did. The same dreams repeated every night, dreams of a woman standing in a dark room, her face obscured, her mouth moving as if speaking words he couldn't hear. The dream always ended with her reaching out to him, and just before she touched him, he would wake up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding in his chest. One morning, Elliot woke up with a start. He had dreamed of Isabel again, but this time, the dream was different. She had spoken to him, her voice faint, almost as though it was coming from inside his head. "You have to find me, Elliot. Before they find you." The words echoed in his mind, their meaning both clear and elusive. He had to find her. But who was they, and what was she warning him about? His phone buzzed on the table, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was a message from Dr. Novak, his therapist, reminding him of their upcoming session. Elliot had been seeing Dr. Novak for months, trying to work through the depression and anxiety that had plagued him for as long as he could remember. But lately, the sessions had been less helpful. His mind felt fractured, his grip on reality slipping further with each passing day. He stared at the text for a moment, then tossed the phone aside. What good would a therapy session do? How could anyone help him when he couldn't even trust his own mind? The day dragged on, the tension building in his chest as he stared at the photograph of Isabel. He had to go to the church. He had to find out what was going on. But every time he considered leaving, a voice in his head whispered, "You're not ready." Despite the voice, Elliot couldn't ignore the pull any longer. He grabbed his coat and left the apartment, his heart racing as he walked through the city streets. The familiar sights and sounds felt distant, as though he was walking through a dream. He kept looking over his shoulder, convinced that someone was following him, though each time he turned around, there was no one there. The church was on the outskirts of town, an old crumbling building that had been abandoned for years. Elliot had passed it countless times, but it had never seemed important until now. The closer he got, the more the air seemed to thicken, a heavy weight settling in his chest. As he pushed open the creaking doors, A chill ran through him. The interior was dark, the only light coming from the stained glass windows. Elliot's footsteps echoed in the vast, empty space as he slowly made his way down the aisle. The air smelled of dust and decay, and every sound seemed amplified in the silence. He reached the altar, and that's when he saw it, a small wooden box resting on the ground, just as the puzzle box had been. His heart skipped a beat. It was the same as the one he had found at his apartment. Elliot knelt down and opened the box, his fingers trembling. Inside was another photograph, this time of Isabel, standing in front of the church, a shadowy figure standing beside her. The figure was obscured, its face hidden in darkness. The message on the back was the same, but there was a new addition. "They're closer now, you need to remember." The words sent a shock through him. Who was the figure beside her? And why did it feel like the walls were closing in on him? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind him. Elliot spun around, his heart racing. There was no one there, just the empty, silent church. But the feeling of being watched, of something lurking just out of sight, was stronger than ever. He stumbled back, his mind spinning. His breathing grew shallow, and he felt the room begin to spin. He had to get out of there. He had to leave. As he made his way to the door, he thought he saw something move in the corner of his eye. He stopped, his heart pounding, but when he turned to look, there was nothing. Nothing but the darkness. Elliot ran out of the church, his footsteps pounding against the pavement, as he fled back to the safety of his apartment. But as he arrived, the sense of dread followed him, clinging to his every step. The photographs, the messages, the church, everything was beginning to unravel. And with each new piece, the puzzle was becoming more dangerous. That night, Elliot sat in his apartment, staring at the photographs once more. He tried to focus, to make sense of it all, but his mind was clouded with fear and confusion. What had he uncovered? What did Isabel want from him? And why had he forgotten so much of his past? As he turned over the most recent photograph of Isabel, something caught his eye. On the edge of the picture, barely visible, was a small symbol, a strange jagged shape that seemed familiar but distant. Elliot's heart skipped a beat. He knew this symbol. He had seen it before, long ago. But where? And what did it mean? The questions piled up, each one more pressing than the last. Elliot knew one thing for certain. He was being led down a path that he couldn't turn back from. And as the darkness closed in around him, he realized that the answers he sought might destroy him before he could find them. Elliot couldn't escape the feeling that the walls were closing in on him. The days blurred together in a haze of sleepless nights, cryptic photographs, and haunting dreams. His thoughts were no longer his own. Each one felt like an echo, as though someone or something was speaking through him. The symbol on the photograph, the jagged shape that had haunted him, was the key. He knew it. He could feel it deep within his bones. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a memory, a forgotten piece of his past that he had buried for reasons he couldn't comprehend. He had to go back to the place where it all began. The photographs, Isabel, the church, they were all connected to a single thread, the thread that led back to his childhood, back to a time he had tried so desperately to forget. But now as the pieces fell into place, the truth became undeniable. The church, he had been there before, as a child. He had wandered its cold, empty halls with his parents, but that wasn't all. He had seen something that had terrified him so deeply, he had suppressed it for years. The memories flooded back, and with them a sense of impending doom. Elliot grabbed his coat and left the apartment, the weight of the revelation sinking in. He had to go back to the church, but this time, it wasn't just about finding Isabel. It was about confronting his past, the part of him he had tried so hard to erase. As he walked through the streets, the world around him seemed to distort, as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling. His vision blurred, and the faces of people he passed seemed unfamiliar, as though he were walking through a dream. His steps felt heavy, each one leading him closer to the truth, and to his own destruction. When he arrived at the church, it was as desolate as he remembered. The doors creaked open, and he stepped inside, the familiar scent of dust and decay filling his nostrils. But this time, there was something different. The air felt thick, charged with an energy he couldn't explain. He walked down the aisle, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The altar was empty, but in the corner of the room, a faint light flickered, casting long shadows across the floor. Elliot felt a pull, an inexplicable compulsion to move toward it. As he neared the light, he saw a figure standing there, cloaked in darkness. It was Isabel. Her face was hidden in the shadows, but he could feel her presence, a cold, unsettling energy that made his skin crawl. "You've come," she said, her voice a soft whisper that seemed to echo in his mind. "It's time to remember." Elliot stepped closer, his heart racing. "Remember what?" he asked, his voice trembling. "What's going on? Who are you?" Isabel's face emerged from the shadows, her features twisted in a way that made Elliot's blood run cold. She was no longer the woman from the photographs, but something else, something unnatural. "You know me, Elliot. You've always known me." Her voice grew more insistent, as though she were speaking directly into his mind. "But you've forgotten. They've made you forget. You've been living in a lie." Elliot felt his mind spinning, the weight of her words crushing him. He stumbled back, his breath coming in shallow gasps. "No, this can't be real." "It's real," Isabel replied, stepping closer. "You're not who you think you are. Your entire life has been a fabrication, a story written by someone else, and now, the truth is coming for you." Elliot's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to process what she was saying. He wanted to run, to escape, but his body felt rooted to the spot. The pieces of the puzzle were scattered before him, but the picture they formed was too twisted to understand. "The truth," Elliot whispered, his voice barely audible. "What truth?" "The truth about your past, Elliot. The truth about what you really are." Isabel's eyes gleamed with an eerie light. "You've been living in a dream for years, but now, the dream is ending." Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet trembled, and the walls of the church seemed to pulse with energy. The photographs, the messages, the symbols, they all began to converge in his mind. He saw flashes of his childhood, moments he had buried so deep that he had convinced himself they were nothing more than nightmares. He saw his parents, their faces twisted in fear as they tried to shield him from something or someone. He saw himself, a child, standing in front of the very same church, holding a small box in his hands. The box was the same one he had found in the apartment, the one with the photographs. Elliot's mind shattered as the memories collided. He was no longer sure what was real, and what was a figment of his imagination. The line between the two had blurred beyond recognition. "You were chosen, Elliot," Isabel said, her voice growing louder. "Chosen to be part of something bigger, but they made you forget. They wiped your memories, erased your past. You were meant to be a part of their plan, but now it's too late." Elliot's head spun as the truth crashed down on him. His entire life had been orchestrated by forces beyond his comprehension. The photographs, the puzzles, the symbols, they were all part of a larger scheme, one he had never understood until now. But just as the truth began to sink in, something dark stirred within him, a cold, terrifying presence that seemed to rise from the depths of his soul. He had been manipulated, yes, but he was no longer a pawn. He was something more, something dangerous. As the church trembled, Elliot looked at Isabel one last time, her face twisted in a grotesque smile, her eyes gleaming with malice. She was no longer the woman he had seen in the photographs. She was something far worse. "You've broken the puzzle, Elliot," she whispered. "But now, you're the one who's trapped." The church seemed to collapse around him, the walls closing in, the floor cracking beneath his feet. But Elliot didn't move. He didn't run. He stood there, his mind a storm of fragmented memories and twisted truths. And then, in the depths of the chaos, he understood. He was no longer a victim of the puzzle. He was the puzzle.